Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, a report is out today showing Arizona is still a few years away on creating enough jobs to get back to pre-recession employment levels. We'll talk about the latest Arizona Town Hall report, which deals with improving our education system, and meet the first winner of the Piper Trust Encore Career Prize. Those stories next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Steve Goldstein in for Ted Simons. The U.S. Senate today passed a historic bill banning workplace discrimination against gays, lesbians, bisexuals, and transgendered individuals. The Employment Non-Discrimination Act, or ENDA, passed by a vote of 64 to 32. Arizona's two senators, Republicans John McCain and Jeff Flake, voted for the bill. Earlier, McCain was leaning against it, and Monday, Flake voted against letting the bill come up for a vote. The senators said they voted for the bill after it was changed to strengthen protections for religious freedom. A report released today by the state predicts a 2% plus job growth rate over the remainder of this year and into next. The report predicts a full jobs recovery to pre-recession levels is 3 to 5 years away. Here to talk about that is Arizona Board of Regents economist Dan Anderson. Dan, welcome.
Steve.
Dan, what is it with this recovery, this idea that we're going to have to wait another year or two? Why are the jobs not coming back faster?
Well, I think the jobs aren't coming back faster because the national economy is slower in recovering. And the national economy is slower in recovering because we don't have the kind of international growth, we don't have the kind of fiscal strength, stamina that's been going on to really drive it forward. We've had in previous recoveries situations where we recovered the jobs that were lost in a recession, maybe in a year, 18 months, 2 years at the most, and we were back to the level we were at before, and then we continued to grow along. I can remember times back in the 90s or so when we were creating 100 to 150,000 jobs a year. Our forecasts now look to be, 50,000 maybe or so, maybe a little bit less than 50,000 jobs this year. Next year coming up around 60,000 jobs. And given the tremendous decline that we had, from 2008 to the present, Arizona's recovered less than half of the jobs that were lost. So it's going to take a while, even when we're creating jobs at 50 to 60,000 a year, to dig ourselves out of that hole just to get us back to where we were before the recession began.
And in recent recoveries, Arizona has always been faster to recover, even if the recession had hit the state harder. What are we doing about job diversity? We've often talked about this, too much reliance on construction, real estate. Are we getting beyond that?
I think we're beginning to get beyond it. It's difficult though. We've been there before so many times. It's hard to get out of that mode. We're being almost forced into doing that because of course people haven't been able to leave where they were. They can't leave Illinois, they can't leave California because they're underwater in their homes, they can't sell it. So they're basically stuck where they are, and we aren't creating very many jobs. So there's very little pushing people out of where they are, and there's very little pulling people in here. The fortunate piece is that when you take a look at job creation, it's not just one sector. It's not just construction that's growing. It's not just manufacturing. We're seeing job creation in most sectors. Now, some areas are going to grow more rapidly than others, most definitely. But it's not that it's just one sector that's driving our economy. So we're getting some of that diversification. I know in economic development circles, they're really trying to bring in a lot more businesses. And I think there are plenty of opportunities.
Well, how big a deal, going with economic development, do you think the Apple expansion to Mesa is?
I think it's indicative of a bigger thing, and that is that we're getting more diversification, that really domestic producers are beginning to say there are opportunities within the United States to bring manufacturing in, to make the components here, instead of everything has to be exported to the Middle East or to the Far East or to other places for that. And so we're beginning to do some of that development here. And when you take a look at the balance sheets of businesses, I mean, they're virtually awash in cash. I mean, they have plenty of resources to make the investment. One of the concerns is how confident are they in the economic health and the decisions that are being made in this country to allow them to make wise decisions here, to invest their money to create those jobs. Probably the biggest problem that I think a business faces is uncertainty. When they don't know what the future is going to bring, it's very risky for them to make those long-term investment decisions.
We've heard so much about uncertainty. Some of it was tied to the Affordable Care Act. People were worried about that. Uncertainty always seems to be part of the business environment, though. So why does uncertainty seem to be so much more dramatic now?
I think there's more uncertainty. I think there are questions at the national level about what the fiscal authorities are going to be doing. I think there's less uncertainty on the monetary side. You know, the Federal Reserve, I think, has signaled pretty clearly that they're going to keep an easy monetary policy. When we saw them kind of indicate that they might be starting to tighten up, boy, did the market react to that quickly. So I think there are some places where there has been some, improvement, but I think particularly at the national level where you don't really know what the federal government's going to be doing and what the directions are going to be, and all of that conflict creates uncertainty, and businesses basically want to stand on the sidelines until they're confident that things are clearer and they know what's going to happen.
As economist for the Board of Regents, you know about the importance of higher education, driving Arizona's economy. We talk about this quite often. So how much does education in the state, K-12 and higher education, have to improve for it to affect the economy in a positive way?
I think it's a big deal, and I think really we do have to have, if we're going to really move our state forward, we need to have something that is valuable to employers. And I think the greatest value that we can have is an educated workforce who can be productive and really help businesses be more efficient. And it's not just a matter of people filling, low-level, low-skilled positions. I think businesses are looking for people who really can be very productive, who can learn, because the jobs are changing all of the time. And we're getting more and more businesses that are more high-tech oriented. They need people with those educational skills.
What industries are you watching closely that may help Arizona's recovery and when the next recession comes for us to get out of the recession faster?
Well, there are a number of sectors. I mean, clearly business services is one of the big areas. I think health services is another significant growth area. Manufacturing, particularly our high-tech manufacturing. We've got a lot going on in a number of different sectors in high-tech. Business services, financial services. I think, again, there's a fairly wide array of areas in which we're seeing growth. Much of it is here, but we're seeing lots of opportunities in Tucson and in Prescott and in Yuma and other places as well.
Dan, finally, I'm a big admirer of economists. Interview them all the time. I respect them tremendously. But when we look at this idea of the job recovery, we heard about 2015. Now we're hearing 2016, 2017. How much can we trust what's coming? Not to cap on economists at all, but how should we know, how should we measure when we really know? What are some factors that those of us who are lay people should always be looking at to see if the economy is really in recovery mode?
Well, I think people, obviously they look at their own individual situations first, and how well am I doing, and how well are my neighbors, and how well are my friends doing. Then on a broader scale, we start to take a look at like the state's budget picture. How healthy is the state's budget? I mean, what kinds of investments is the state putting back into the system, and how is that improving? And then finally, what do we really see in the way of business expansion? I mean, we need to have not only the existing businesses here growing, but we need to be attracting other businesses. We're clearly a growth area. I think Arizona still has the advantages that it's had for decades and decades, but I don't think we're going to see the kind of rapid growth that maybe we saw in previous decades. A slower, more predictable kind of growth, I think is advantageous for us.
Dan, thanks for the conversation. Appreciate it.
Get the inside scoop on what's happening at Arizona PBS. Become an 8 Insider. You'll receive weekly updates on the most anticipated upcoming programs and events. Get the 8 Insider delivered to your email inbox. Visit azpbs.org to sign up today.
For the past 5 decades, Arizona Town Hall has created a forum for Arizona leaders to offer solutions to our biggest problems. The latest town hall focused on early childhood education. More than 170 Arizona leaders, business people, educators, elected officials, and students hammered out a report that proposes ideas to improve our education system. Tara Jackson, president of Arizona Town Hall, is here to discuss the report. Also with me is Todd Sanders, president and CEO of the Greater Phoenix Chamber of Commerce, one of the town hall participants. Welcome to you both.
Thank you, Steve.
Tara, let's talk about early education. First of all, let's define our terms. When we say early, what does early really mean?
Early means birth to age 8.
Wow, birth. Okay. Let's talk about some of the suggestions that are going to come out of the report. Are there things that are practical things that Arizona can do right away, or are these some long-term solutions?
All of the above. There are practical solutions that apply to mothers, to small business owners, to people who have nothing to do with the policy or not involved in the policy that might happen at the state legislature. There are also recommendations that apply to policy leaders. So they are all across the board, and some can start today. Some are already happening.
And what are some of those?
Well, for example, how you choose to interact with a young child has a huge impact on their brain development, which then impacts how well they do in school, how well they promote our economy. I was just listening to your discussion with the economist you just interviewed, and one of your last questions was, how can we know what's going to happen in 2016? Well, we can help control it by helping to educate a workforce that is ready for the future economy.
Todd, that's so important. I know you deal with the economy all the time. So education and the economy in sync. Early childhood education, we heard so much when Governor Napolitano was in office about all-day K. Is that still important? Was that overrated? Give us some background on that.
No, it really is, and I think Dan's points were absolutely right on. There's a growing body of evidence that engaging children at the earliest age really makes a difference, and that delta really is very large as children get older. There was a study that was actually discussed. It was a study that was done in the 60s, and they tracked these kids for 40 years, and the benefits, the ROI is incredible. I think one of the conservative estimates was that the ROI was 10 to 1 in terms of dollars spent. So from our perspective, this is critical.
Tara, let's talk about engaging children. What does that mean? What sort of communication does that entail?
Well, there were a number of different things that one of our keynote speakers talked about, and she is known around the world for her research and studies on what is impactful in children. Her name is Dr. Adele Diamond, and her presentation is actually on our website, and our participants were incredibly taken with the research. So engaging, some of the most effective engagement is not necessarily what we might think as a parent. Instead of trying to get your 3-year-old to learn every single letter, for example, what those studies show is that it's far more important to have them experiencing interaction, to have storytelling, to have physical activity. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting and an asset that Arizona has that, in Dr. Diamond's words, we don't take advantage of, is being bilingual. Growing up bilingual as a young child actually has been shown to have a huge impact on what they call executive functions. Executive functions are things like being patient, being able to listen and pay attention closely, and so that when you grow up learning 2 languages, as I believe Todd did, you are 10 steps ahead in learning these important skills.
Todd, based on what you heard, I'm going to come back to economic factors as well. Was there discussion about the impact on kids who come from low-income families as opposed to those who middle income or higher income in terms of how they learn, how they're communicated with?
Well, I think that the discussions that were had were that these things really matter across the board. And I think what Tara mentioned, what I think was very impactful, is that parents can be a big part of this, a big solution. It doesn't have to be a big spend. So the Phoenix Public Library has a tremendous program where they're reading to kids, and they're teaching the children to do the same thing. So I think that crosses all socioeconomic barriers, and it really can be impactful.
Well, talk about just learning to communicate, because in your business, Tara, we all have to communicate in a certain way. We all have to know how to get along with other people, and that has to start at an early age as well.
Absolutely, it's tremendously important. The language skills, all of those things are exponential over time. I think of the idea of going to the moon. As you take off, if you don't have that correct trajectory, that small difference in the beginning can be huge at the end. And that's how I see early childhood education. And as the earlier we can engage, the bigger the return on that investment.
Tara, let's dig in on some of the concerns though. When early education is not good, what are some of the things that we should fear? How does this affect society? How does this affect kids for the rest of their lives?
Well, in your earlier segment, you said you were a big fan of economists. And your question goes right into one of our economist speakers who was from the Federal Reserve. And one question I think everyone had is, why would the Federal Reserve care about early education? And the reason is the Federal Reserve, one of their missions is to make sure that our economy is very robust. And what they have learned from many studies is that if you don't have effective quality early education, whether it's from a center or a program or a parent in home, there are huge ramifications later on in terms of social services, high school dropouts, our jail systems, huge ramifications.
Todd, what about the business community? What should the business community be doing to make sure that K-12 or even earlier than that, education in Arizona is improved? Is there more the business community could be doing?
Well, I think there's a growing awareness among the business community that we really need to start engaging at this level. It's clear, I think Tara's right, when you look at some of the biggest line items in the budget, all of that can be avoided if you're doing the right things. So we think that there's a lot of opportunity here. And I can tell you from our perspective, the Greater Phoenix Chamber of Commerce, as an economic development organization, it's tremendously important. You hear about an 8% unemployment rate, and as I talk to members, they can't find people. So there's something missing there.
Tara, there's this feeling that, I don't want to be cynical, but there's this feeling there has to be a buy-in. The town hall is vital. It's important for getting the ideas out, making suggestions. Is there more that needs to be done to make sure that our leaders, not just business leaders like Todd, but others, will say, I recognize this importance and now I'm going to do something about it?
There's always more that can be done, especially with something like early education that everyone should care about, even if you don't have children. Early education has such an impact on our economy and on the taxes you're going to pay. To go back to that economic analysis, every dollar that's spent has been shown over and over again in a variety of studies to come back at $10 and up to $18 or more in the tax savings money that you're going to be paying to incarcerate people.
Todd, when we see the announced expansion of Apple, just use that as an example because it happened this week, if Arizona were doing better when it comes to early childhood education, would we be seeing more announcements like that? Would the Apple announcement not be quite as big a deal because it would be more common?
Well, I think you're absolutely right on that. And more importantly, when you think about the existing Arizona companies and the job base, that's the great way to keep Arizona companies here and getting them to grow. Think about Intel and the growth that they're engaging in now. More companies see a qualified workforce, you're going to see more of that. So I think that's absolutely correct.
For both of you, Todd, let me start with you. How important is a vision for this? Because when we talk about early childhood education, people may not think they're going to see the benefits of that for 15 to 18 years, who knows? What does it take to have a vision, to have patience that these things will pan out?
Well, I think that's part of what you alluded to, especially with policymakers. It's our job to really make the case for this, because you do have to have vision, because it's not a short-term type of proposal. But I think that these results can actually be seen at an earlier time frame than necessarily a full 13 years. So I think that our job is to make sure we make the case. There are groups like Arizona Build who are doing a tremendous job. First things first. So through those bodies and chambers, other business organizations, I think we can make the case.
Tara, quick final thoughts?
Well, I would add to that what is great about this particular topic is while the long-term consequences and vision are so important, the good news is we can see consequences in 24 hours and in 1 week if we pay attention to this and use some of the resources that are out there.
Tara, Todd, thanks so much for the conversation.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
The Virginia G. Piper Charitable Trust will honor an inspiring Encore career leader who's addressing a major social need in Maricopa County with a second career. The recipient of the inaugural Encore Career Prize is Mike McQuaid. He's president of JM Management Company, a real estate and investment firm. He's also deeply involved in numerous Valley charities and joins me now to talk about winning the award and his charity work. Mike, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Steve.
First of all, you had to be nominated for this. Did you know you were nominated?
I knew a while ago that I was nominated by the United Way and a couple of other individuals.
How did you decide to get involved with homelessness in particular with your business background?
Well, in the very beginning, it was more of just from trying to help in the community, the people who are homeless. So my wife and I, many years ago, got involved with the early upstart of a charity called Andre House. And it's a soup kitchen still going on today. It's serving a meal right as we speak in downtown Phoenix. And we were looking for, through our church, a community project for teenagers, including our own son. So that's how I first got involved and got around the homeless of our community.
Mike, many people are charitable. Many people spend some time, some money. You've obviously gone above and beyond with that. And I wonder if when you win a prize like this too, it's clearly significant, it's extremely meaningful to you. So beyond that, what do you think in your mind and your soul really drove you to do this?
For me, it really was meeting individuals on the street, almost 30 years ago, that had almost nothing. They had no family. They were by themselves. They were really down and out and kind of given up on life. And for me personally, I couldn't imagine that because I come from a very close-knit, supportive family. Right. And my wife, Molly, and I have two wonderful sons and grandchildren, and we have that family unit. It just hurt me to see people suffering like that. And that's what really first got me involved with trying to help the homeless.
I say this jokingly to some extent, but people have this vision of successful business leaders, not that they don't do charitable things, but they're driving hard to make that next buck. You're making $1 a month involved with the Human Services Campus. How did you reach that amount?
By the way, they haven't paid me lately either. So. But it was more just a token thing when I was first asked to be the managing director of the Human Services Campus. And I really have this award in particular is very meaningful to me. I never got into charity work to win awards or a prize like this, certainly, but to have it be from Piper, the Virginia G. Piper Charitable Trust, and Experience Matters. Those two organizations mean a great deal to me. So on behalf of hundreds and thousands of volunteers that help the homeless, I'm happy to accept it. But my business background, I think, really did help me in helping create the Human Services Campus. That's a 12-acre site, about the same size a lot of times that we do in our business, a neighborhood grocer-anchored shopping center. So putting the right partners together, creating a site plan that works, and how to deliver services is very similar to a retail operation. So that's helped me tremendously.
What are some of the things being done at the Human Services Campus that are making not necessarily a dent in homelessness, but making it a little bit easier for those folks who are homeless?
Well, we really are going beyond a dent at this time. It used to be just food, shelter, clothing, and that was the compassionate thing to do to help somebody that didn't have those things. And that's what as I say, that was what drew me to it. But I always wanted to see what could we do more, and really to end someone's homelessness is to put them in housing. And so years and years ago, Steve Zabilski from St. Vincent de Paul and Mark Holleran from Cass and Sister Adele O'Sullivan from Healthcare for the Homeless and many others got together, and we got the support of the community, leaders like Marty Schultz and Governor Brewer, at that time the chairman of the Board of Supervisors. And we really sat down and worked out how could we better serve the homeless, and that would be if we were in one location so that we could deliver those services, the basic needs, in a better fashion. And that's grown. Today is our 8th anniversary at the Human Services Campus, which is tremendous. We've done, tens of thousands of meals and thousands of medical appointments, and we helped thousands of people get employed and back on their feet. But what we're really doing now, and with the help of United Way, what I'm involved with, is permanent supportive housing. As I said earlier, the way that somebody ends their homelessness is to be housed. And so we're now focusing on, it's great to provide those basics, food, shelter, and clothing, but we want to get people into housing faster. And we've set as a community a goal of ending chronic homelessness. And believe it or not, I can say today, I said it last night at the awards banquet, we will end chronic homelessness among veterans in the next 12 months. We've identified all the chronically homeless in our community, and we will do that. And shortly thereafter, we should end chronic homelessness. That's somebody who's been homeless more than a year or multiple times in the last 3 years. And I heard in your earlier discussions about economic models and what's good for the community. Those are individuals that have been constantly taking our services disproportionately. At the campus, we see about 12 or 1,300 people every day, and they consume over 65% of our resources, that small 15%. So we're housing chronically homeless individuals.
Mike, thank you. Congratulations again.
Thank
nice
you.
to have you here.
Thank you.
Friday on Arizona Horizon, it's the Journalist Roundtable. Apple opening a production plant in Mesa was just one of the many big business stories this week. We'll be here tomorrow night at 5:30 and 10 for the Journalist Roundtable. I'm Steve Goldstein. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.